So the topic is scientific communication for a scholar, for a scientist. Victoria has said a lot, and even you did a questionnaire about social media and who use what, and why it's me who's going to talk about how to do scientific communications for scientists, because I graduated from the University of Whitmore and the postgraduate in scientific communication, the only one in Russia. That was the first course, and more than 6 years I've been doing scientific communication. I started it when there had been no notion of that, no topic of that in Russia, and I was an organizer of Science Slam, I coordinator of summer school for scientific communication, also organized Old Russian Festival of Science and different scientific popular lectures. And my thesis was devoted to making up a digital portrait of a Russian scholar and how our Russian scientists are using social media. And I will share some curious information at the end. Would like to discuss it with you. So now I am a manager on corporate and social responsibility in BIOCAD. It's a technological company. We are developing and producing pharmaceuticals of autoimmune, infectious diseases and viral diseases. And also we are developing a vaccine against COVID. And also we're going to produce one of our Russian vaccines. So today we are going to talk with you about what scientific communication is and why you need it. Then we'll talk about the bingo of formats of scientific communications, which is sort of a golden part of my presentation, I think, because thanks to the Center of Scientific Communication of the university I used to work at, we have a great map of what scientists and communicators can do in scientific communication. We're going to discuss about secrets of success and action plans. For instance, if you want to start as a scientific, as a communicator, and I will tell you where you can learn it. So Yuri Dut, also a very interesting story. Practically a year has passed since that graduation, and at that time, when everybody watched the video with Konstantin Latygin, I hope that all present here have seen the video. If you haven't, please watch it. And there was a joke then, very popular, about the community of scientific communicators, that Yura Dud is the chief communicator, and of course we all will have to learn from him. And astrophysicist Latygin quite curious when Yura, well, he used to interview politicians, rappers, and suddenly he got over to a scientist or a scholar. For us, it was very surprising. And we were very happy about that, because here Konstantin is presented as a person who's not only working in a laboratory which discovered the ninth planet, but just a person who plays in a rock group and uses a skate was board, and just an ordinary person like everyone else. And the majority of you, as far as I understood, you are all scientists and you are planning to do your professional activities as scientists. I am just sort of an outsider, because I'm a humanitarian, purely humanitarian. Started scientific communication only because I got curious and wanted to talk and communicate with scientists. But there was bias. I was biased that scientists, someone in white gowns in an ivory tower. But here we can see that we are doing a video project as communicators, and Yura's doing it for tens of millions of people. Of course, well, you can see what kind of persons they are, the scholars, the scientists. And Yura is talking to Predknaev, chief publisher of Plus One, very popular publication resource. And it's very important. And that's why I advise you very much to look up. So what about the internet memes? There are a lot of memes about scientists, about our sphere, and so I've selected the most indicative for me because first of all, everybody thinks that well, to the left, you can see that the person's trying to say something about science, but in the format, people just don't understand. To the right, a scientist is trying, using his own complicated slang, trying to explain something. It seems to him that it's so simple, but people just don't understand. They say, okay, well, there are a lot of other memes when people are talking about interactions and relations of scientists and journalists. Not a very popular thing. For instance, when scientists say, we have made an experiment, and it seems to us that if you do this or that, then possibly we will find a pharmaceutical. The journalist, having read all this, will write an article saying that okay, the anti-cancer pharmaceutical is discovered. So that is why scientists are afraid of talking to journalists. And what about scientific communicators? How do they view it? For us communicators, I think I would put it institutionally that it's an umbrella term which covers the processes and mechanisms of promoting scientific ideas and scientific information, both inside the professional community among scientists and also outside and beyond it. So scientific communication provides support of scientific ideas and helps you to make decisions, makes up scientific agenda, and it can really impact society and community and the decision makers. For instance, scientific policy is something we usually forget. And if we say scientific communication is for people who did not even hear such a term, and they have an impression usually that, well, there's something scientific PR, journalism, and but actually, scientific communication is something much bigger than that, and rather, in my perspective, scientific policy is one of the pillars of scientific communication in general, because we depend very much not only on what mass media is writing, but also on which decisions are made from the top. Talking about the target audience, scientific communication, well, it can be split into several main actors. Number one, of course, is the scientists themselves as subjects or the drivers or main experts of the field. And only thanks to the scientists, scientific communicators can exist, because otherwise there would be nothing for us to talk about. Mass media, of course, new medium, which both is an audience and communication channels. It's state authorities, decision makers, also representatives of business facilities, the people who will further be using your discoveries and scientific discoveries, achievements, and allow me to put it as new brain, further future postgraduates and students of universities and school children, and certainly just ordinary people, which based on scientific communication can will be able to make their own decisions. Briefly about the history of scientific communication, totally we realized that scientific communication, well, um, uh, Well, it was born long ago when first scientific popular books were published. But talking about making up it as an institution, this happened, professionalization happened about 30 years ago. And currently, we realize that for the recent 5 years, approximately, in this country, the community of scientific communicators is being actively formed. They're talking actively with their foreign colleagues, and the first magistrate of scientific and bachelor programs and summer schools have appeared. Some new programs are closed, some others are open, and you can look up on that my research, because we did a big research for RBC. It was done in 2017-18 about the field of scientific communication in Russia. We did quite a job. We have gathered all the projects that had existed for the moment, and looked at how institutions and universities were doing it, how active they are in scientific communication. And we did several research using social media with organizations, and I'm going to talk about that later. Also, 2 years ago, there was an association founded in the sphere of communication and science. And possibly Victoria might have mentioned this association, which covers communicators, scholars, journalists who would like to be in scientific communication. As far as I remember, in 2018, the Russian Academy of Sciences set up a commission to popularize science, which included different awards and grants, which are given to best projects, to best specialists in scientific communication. So, what's the goal of all of it, of scientific communication? Well, rather, I think it's subjective, of course, but the way I view it, the most important goal is to help people who are unaware of how to behave in a certain situation. For instance, uh, whether to have a vaccine, or to have this vaccination against COVID, or use antibiotics or not. So it's a global task of education. For instance, why a scholar would do communication? Well, we're going to talk about that later. I think globally, the mission is exactly this: to save the mankind. And certainly, talking about professional goal, this goal is trust to science, and to upgrade the prestige of scientists, and to attract more scientists and scholars to science, more experts and specialists. Because now we realize, even starting with schools, so we develop more projects involving school children into scientific communication. And thus, we realize that it's not all helpless. And in the future, we will be someone to be based on, and to trust, and whom to trust. To wrap up, why we need communication in the first place is for the people to be happy, both scientists and wider public. Why would a scholar do the scientific communication? I would like to ask you. I have 10 bullet points ready for you, but I think I'm sure you have some other ideas and thoughts. So you can raise your hand, and the team will help us to switch on the microphone, and you will speak up as to what your thoughts are about all this. Why do a scholar use scientific communication in your opinion? Unfortunately, I don't see any hands raised, so please indicate somehow.
Для ускорения внедрения
To Accelerate introduction. Okay. Well, actually, yes, you can write it in the chat, and I will see it. To accelerate introducing discoveries into life, yes. To promote your brand name, yes, a very good idea too. And do we have someone here who already did it? Scientific communication, and or maybe heard about it. Yes, to look for new colleagues. Excellent. Exactly. Okay, good. Look, you can continue writing in the chat, but so far, I think I will continue. mm, well, of course, it's all right what you were saying, and there are several more things that I would like to mention here. Look, why do we need scientific communication? First, um, uh, it's to increase some number of citations. We cannot say for sure that thanks to active using scientific communication by scholars, their citation index and here will be increased. So what we have seen from our experience is that if the citation index is increased, the articles of the scientist or himself in mass media or social media, well, actually, this funnel of people who will be able to see the article will expand. And then get it quoted or cited. Recently, I attended an event with a lot of scientists gathered there, and we were discussing this topic with our young scientists, prominent scientists, and they said, look, we set a Twitter because it is convenient to track fresh publications in my field. As to what scholars are writing, the top scholars are writing, I would like to follow because I realized that if we didn't have Twitter, I would learn about this publication not soon, not very soon, and I would have to make an effort to track it. Those issues of new publications and to participate in the debates, in the discussions. And see the opinions of other specialists in the field, those respected specialists, and to see what they think about all this. Of course, needless to say, partially the citation index is growing, and the number of ordinary people that can touch the sacred research is increasing, and possibly in the future someone will quote it. Certainly, number two is that if a scientist put his work in open access, many more people will be able to cite the research, not only to participate in the discussion or something else, but in principles, they don't have to pay money and buy it, and he can look up and see and use it in his own research. In 17 and 18, in the Edinburgh University, as I said, there was a big research done using social media correlated with citation of scientists. And our conclusion then was that scientists where they're active, where their press services are active in promoting their research, and the scientists who are actively using social media themselves, indeed, they are cited in all channels, much more than others. And the so-called asthmatic score, it's an alternative metric of citation which track as to how many times your article was tagged in the Twitter or Facebook in different other media, and you can thus track right away as to how your article was hyped. And then new collaborations crop up, and that's the right thing you mentioned. We know a lot of successful cases when indeed, scientists, they again, judging by my own experience, they do not just read articles. Well, it's very difficult for all of them to track all the articles, and more often than not, you scientists are tracking the articles which are closer to your subject of work, because we face a lot of such things, of problems of horizontal ties, when scientists from one laboratory are unaware what other laboratories doing. So even worse, and it's difficult for you to find out what's going on in another country or interdisciplinary laboratory. But having read an article in social media, you will see what we can do together. And there are so many cases like that. And the recent one is university the uh, uh, guys which were doing glass, and they saw in Commerçant an article, a scientific article, telling about their colleagues who are also were engaged in glass, but in another institution. And they said we were absolutely unaware of those people doing the same thing. It turned out that they were doing cool things. They got in touch with them, and not thanks to reading all those scientific articles, but only because they have read it in mass media, and have seen this case. New people, new employees join the laboratory, and postdoc laboratory. And it's good when scientists have reputation and professionalism, but we realize that to attract and develop new people, you need some information noise. You should know how to communicate and show off in social media. Not only because I'm from ITMO, but in principle, it seems to me that ITMO does show quite a beautiful city story, and result of promoting their scientists and laboratories. So if you have an opportunity, or if there's someone belonging to it more, you can share your experience, and please share it with us. So then business provides money. Well, also business pays attention to that, also thanks to scientific publications. Of course, you might have some agreements with laboratories and companies, and many companies indeed contract important publications, judging by your reputation as scientists. But again, now I work in a biotechnological company, and I do realize that half of the new ideas can be found thanks to traditional way, but half of them are being found because someone reads an article in social media, and thus would say, "Oh, it's a great idea. I would like to use it and implement it in our company." That's how it works. Uh, Financing authorities can see the research, the work. And in many applications for a grant, you will have to indicate that you are doing a scientific or popular article, or that you will present it and give some comments. So this is taken into account. So if you close the grant successfully, having followed all the promises that you've made, then certainly next time it would be easier for you to get a new grant. So scientific communication will provide you money. A wider audience will give you the feedback. It is more difficult here in Russia for us than for them in Europe, because in Europe they have a program, response research innovation. Well, it's the responsible research and innovation, when at each stage or phase of research, the community, wider community can get involved and comment, starting from the very initial phase. For instance, when they say, for instance, I'm sort of thinking about some, special container to process plastic, or maybe we should somehow replace the batteries. And the scientists would say, okay, the community provided a request. So, of course, they cannot dictate as to which work they should do, but scientists do listen to that. And take all this into account, all those comments and feedback of a wider public. That's about how, well, it is more often for scholars to publish their positive results. And what about negative results of their research? Needless to say that if it seems that it is negative, then you are a bad scientist. That's not true, because by way of test and trial, and everybody makes mistakes. There are no pure experiments. And if there are no scientists who think that here is excellent results, I'm a great scientist, but very often it turns out that if the research is positioned in the way, there might be some trick or issue, maybe not a big one, but of course it is good if the scientists would be able to share their negative results, because this would confirm and improve their real research and help other scientists who are planning to do similar research, and having looked up the mistakes of their colleagues, would be able to fix something in their own research and not to make the same mistakes. Every year, I think since 2016, all over the world, well, of course, during the pandemic, we didn't have it. It's March of Science. And I advise you very much to look up as to how it was all done. You can look up the photos or in Twitter and in some other social media. It's a great view. People of different ages, from kindergarten up to our grandparents, they were getting out into the streets, demonstrating with slogans to support science.
Понимаешь, что
And you realize that scientific communications do work, people are involved, and this is our common cause. Higher prestige of the scientist as a profession. Well, of course, every scholar wants to see his profession to be more prestigious, that students, school children would follow up in his stead. So everyone wants to hear that students say, scientists and, the academicians, they're really nice people. They, I think we should dispel the myth of professors like unfavored people. There's one girl who's a neurobiologist who has conducted a lot of different experiments and research. They launched a flash mob titled Scientists for Selfie. So under this hashtag, scientists from different countries published their selfies from, so to say, fieldwork selfies from laboratories. There were various scientists from various areas even well, from Russia, I reacted in Twitter, and he responded to me. So I understand if I could find her email, well, she would have ignored that. And since it was in Twitter, but unfortunately, I lacked resources at the time as I was going to Germany. So if anyone is ready to join such a project, I think that's going to be really cool. So they set up this flash mob, millions of pictures were posted, and then they conducted an opinion poll what they think about scientists who, the classical image of a scientist.
Считают ученых, которые сделали селфи, более теплыми и
And it turned out that these scientists, the polled scientists, believed that these people are closer to them because of these pictures that were posted. So I just wanted to say that in the mass media, scientists are sometimes portrayed as very eccentric, divorced from realities. Uh, so that's how Pisha and her team they managed to demonstrate to all people who saw these photographs. We believe that these are the people who saw this uh, as people with normal interests rather than people belonging to some unknown group. So that's why I think that there's a widespread conviction among people that most scientists are introverts who cannot be approached. And it's probably it might be true to a large extent. But in the meantime, I think we should somehow demonstrate that scholars are not like that. And it's really interesting field with that. Scientist's reputation in the laboratory and his laboratory is strengthened in the society. Well, people think that most of the times, so a scientist's work is of no social significance. But I just wanted to cite here results of some research in the University Center in America, where they tested the level of confidence in the scientific uh, news from the world of science in the mass media, and it turned out that the level of trust in scientists was around 76%. So it's quite a high level, which implies that people do believe scientists. They want scientific information to be translated to them. While the confidence in the mass media was roughly around 32%, less than half anyway. So I reckon that probably in Russia we are expecting the same figures. So it's probably would be helpful if you just subscribe to communicator scientists, but some people think that such people who popularize their scientific results are just communicators, and you cannot trust them very much. When you are working on the same subject for several years, you probably plunge too deeply in your research, and sometimes you can't see some fresh new solutions. So when you start explaining to a, say, person from the humanities, and he would ask you just the key question. So when I was engaged in some training sessions, so what? So what? A scholar was dealing with some problems such as, for example, nanopipes. And it's just an absolutely incredible technology. And so you're trying to find out what's so cool about this new technology, how this will affect, how this will change the world, how this is going to affect my life. I don't understand this. So this person, a scientist, would say, well, we can try some other way around, you know. There was another scientist, Richard Raymond, who said that a scientist is capable of explaining to an 8-year-old child what he actually does. But if he fails to do that, it means that he cannot really resolve this problem. So you try to simplify these things um, until you just think that would think that everything is so simple. So it's good to test this on an 8-year-old child. And there's another important point as the skills are improved, the skills of dealing with different types of audiences. It turns out that external dealing in external communications, you learn how to deal with journalists, with humanities specialists, and from colleagues, from peer community or business and state structures representatives, and you can tell them why this particular research is really needed. Because people have the right to know what they spend their taxes on. They want to know that my money, uh, has been paid towards this particular research. So if you're going to tell them in the mass media, in the social media, it will be very good. It means that if it hasn't been posted in Instagram, it means it does not exist, as they say, because it's not clear how you can use that. So it's really important to understand. Successful examples of scientist communicators. Well, of course, there's much more to that than is cited here, but you can see it's quite famous, well-known people here. Secondly, they actually do it in different ways, but they have their personal means of communication. Some of them use different social media, others would deal with journalists more, some people make concessions, but each of these people have their own well established brand, um, high level of citation rate, media activity, and so on and so forth. Well, talking about younger scientists, those who have just started their paths in big science. For example, Georgi Tur, a candidate of science since 2004, has been dealing in academic communications and SLAM. A year ago, he set up Department of Scientific Communications. Well, in fact, possible to demonstrate how you can combine and balance out if you don't want to give up big science, how you can just specialize in communications. You can invent some new formats. You can talk to journalists. For example, Anton Popov, who works as a scientific employee, a candidate of biology. Anton is also involved in some circles, academic circles, and he was among this community of scientific communications, and he was so inspired with um, academic communication that he decided to launch his own project. And it seems like this idea lies on the surface, but for some reason, no one uh, translated this into life. So every week, scientists create stream messages streaming from their laboratory. So they about 1 hour every week they would tell the community about their activities, for example, about the experiments, their labs, so on and so forth. I think that it's just so interesting. And there's a regular award that will be given to such labs with scientific communications. So, by the way, they've been involved in this project together with Google, a series of video um, video clips. So they did these video clips. I mean, the people which were not directly related to scientific endeavor, but generally they did these video clips about people who were involved in scientific endeavor. If you want to be engaged in scientific communications, that's how you can do this. So this is a really incredible table here. This has been in effect 6 years. It's a kind of a bingo academic communication table. It's just one part of this thing. So you can write a popular paper, a scientific Twitter, which I strongly recommend. I think that in quite many arguments there to do this Twitter. I think, in my view, there's a research gate, but it's only science, Twitter, and Facebook. In Facebook, it's more like
другом выясняют. Вот. А в Твиттере все-таки больше, ну, выяснение
in
отношений.
Twitter, it's mostly about relations, more science. Recommendations on Facebook. If you are a scientist, you want to deal in you want to raise your citation index, citation rate, you can do this.
Кто лучше станцует свою диссертацию, потрясающая, мне кажется, история. Делают мультфильмы, делают
animated cartoons, comics. It was based on Skolkovo. scenes. You can see some projects I've mentioned before. On top, you can see this mouse, very good podcast. What else can be done here? Scientific popular video. I think it is about Mendeleev. So we are more used to the fact that a scientist or a communicator records some video and um, tells us about this in a language that is available to people. But at this point, we decided to involve people who were not connected with science in any way. This very good, Tolstovke clothes, merch. A lot of different things were created to promote the scientific endeavor. So quite beautiful things were done by guys under the microscope. They pictured such as leaves or a piece of sugar, uh, different subjects which do not look similar. So incredible things that when you look at them, you just see that they do exist. Just a few more examples. I'll send you this presentation afterwards. Well, honestly, I did want to make this presentation to go over uh, every format, how we can do this, and how um, useful that would be to post it in social media if you could give me a specific instruction. But I believe that if you have any questions on these formats, I will be able to answer them. But so far, let me offer you a common plan of action. In any case, whatever you are planning to do, first of all, you need to know about your target audience. Because in all projects, it's a, a real mistake when everybody wants to know about everything. But it's just impossible because there are different channels of communication and different methods. You know, there's a specific audience, 18 to 35 years old people who are interested in science and technology. But what can be interesting indeed, as you think about this, where would they be located? Well, of course, no contact, direct contact in this case, but talking about school children, students, for example, that might be a direct contact. So that's what you have to proceed from that. So as you create your unique proposal, you create your own brand so as to have an impact on this audience. So if it fails, you can start in the opposite manner. Um, for example, out of these people, the motivation and the secret of success, uh, which I referred to. But on the whole, I think you would be able to understand who they are. And uh, chemicals scientist who has just returned from university, worked abroad, for example, or a specialist in physics, or talking about younger scientists. Georgi says, I'm a glass maker, and that's it. So, no matter what event is held where people want to show glass, that they would show Georgi because he is a real professional in glass. Or there's a journalist dealing with medicine. So he is a candidate of science, of medical science, but he has become a journalist in this area. So everyone knows that if they want to tell someone uh, in a popular way on about medicine, they would ask him. They would definitely want him. So you should know where your main uh, strength is and where is your expertise. So if you want to do something, to develop something, you can think of some metaphor, of course, that's, that's what you should do in this case. In any case, it would be nice if you could prepare a strategic plan how your project is going to be developed on the whole, or you are going to do this project and to promote this project, and of course, without support, without a specific team, if you are just a scientist, if you work at some research institute or at the university, you can come to your employees at the university, students, and say, I have this project and I want to show it to everyone. Year Last year, I went to university to young postgraduates, scientific communications. They said, "Oh, that's really interesting. We do want to be involved in that. We want our research to be known to everyone, and that's what they do right now. And I do think that in the nearest time they will be able to attain what they really want." So, what is really important regarding the audience? So you've defined your audience, platform is chosen. But if you don't want to work for a broader audience, you can go to Twitter, and you remember, for example, if you have among the audience not only the candidate of biological science, but also physicists. So in this case, you would probably do something so you could make it more understandable to uh, physicists, talking about content. As for mass media, well, mass media always can always edit and do it their own way, but so you always must have a chance to see that. For example, you said something clearly, but so you need to have comments to make comments before the publication. Of course, it should be in conformity with the interests of a particular audience. If something goes wrong, you should understand that your content should be well structured and more or less comprehensible. Talking about social media, I don't know whether it's really urgent for you, whether it's really topical at the moment, but talking about activity among your subscribers, especially when you represent a university or a scientific institution, that's really important to know that. Where you can learn if you want to study scientific communications. I think in Russia we have already a sufficient number of such institutions teaching in scientific communications. It can be auxiliary education, or there are master of science classes in scientific communications. You can get quite many skills in scientific communication from these institutions, and also in networking, because the key center for scientific communication in Russia, which is already garnered all the many specialists from this area, as that's where, from this center for scientific communication, you'll be able to get really much knowledge. If you don't want to spend 2 years on that, you can get through an online source, an online scientific communication course, also set up in the same center. But on the whole, I believe that they have quite sufficient information for beginning communicators that can be used um, later. The School of Scientific Communication, I was a curator, by the way, at one of such schools, and within this academic year, we had a number of lectures, uh, classes, podcasts, videos. We invited all kind of specialists to the summer school, and of course, 40 plus members of this course. They were absolutely uh, delighted, and they were so happy because they managed to get what they wanted. So everybody left with a feeling that they need to do something, some kind of projects. If you want to read, there are books on scientific communication in Russian, translated by our Center for SciComm. The left, uh, the right-hand corner, it's by Matthew Shipman, is more applied research. So if you want to start uh, studying the subject, you should probably start with this book. And the two other books are more about theory, but it's I live in a publishing house. What else can we offer in this area? If you decided to start right now or some time ago, you were hesitant, but you decided that you need strong scientific communication, you can first of all subscribe to our chat group of SciComm Center, TMO, recommendations, research, and so on and so forth.
You can also subscribe to Vkontakte and also Science Slam and Barcamp. And also here is the link to Facebook, and you can see the fresh news from the field of scientific communication in Russia. Start your social media and track cool guys in your field. Victoria left her contacts. An excellent idea of subscribing to someone who's also doing something similar to you. Um, for instance, you can speak up at Science Slam or Bar Camp or some other events which are aiming at a wider audience. And also you can provide comments to journalists or maybe write your own scientific or popular articles, and also enroll for next summer school in spring, and we will be happy to have you. Or maybe you can do your own cool project, a new project. Sometimes you think that everything already was done, but that's not true, and you can use some new things, like Anton Popov's example that I quoted in Instagram and laboratories meeting. Seemingly very obvious, but actually turned out the other way around. And it's great to have more and more projects like that, more and more people to be involved in scientific communication, and to make it more open for the scientists. And then we'll be happy. And the most important thing I wanted to drive home to you is you don't have to make yourself do those things. You should enjoy it. And again, the results of summer camp showed that the most important thing every presenter was saying was that have fun, Enjoy yourself, enjoy your work, and your scientific communicating work, and only if you really enjoy what you are doing, only then will it be successful and useful to other people. Thank you very much for attention.